Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Sachin Gupta, and I'll be moderator for today's discussion, Innovations in Radiology. So, first of all, I'd like to congratulate all the radiology professionals across the world for International Day of Radiology, which is celebrated every year on 8th of November. So, today's topic, innovations in radio. Actually, interestingly, if you look at the history of International Day of Radio, so in 1895, Röntgen invented, X-rays on this day. So, and X-ray happens to be the most critical healthcare innovation ever. So I believe the topic ties up very well with today's theme of today's Radiology Day. And we have a global panel with, speakers from across the world who will be speaking about innovations and future of radio and how, radio will shape up the future of healthcare in coming times. So I'll just do a quick, introduction of the panel. So we have Dr. Shamsher Dalal from USA. He's a he's a MD radiology from India and followed by a post graduation in radio from US and then MBA from Wharton and now he's medical director of radio at a leading medical center in USA. Welcome, Dr. Dalal.
Yeah, thank you, Sachin. Glad to be here.
Yeah. We also have Dr. Venkat Raman. Dr. Venkat Raman is, first ever ambassador of Royal College of Radiology of UK. There are only, two ambassador of Royal College of Radiology globally, and he happens to be one of them. Welcome, Dr. Venkat.
Thank you very much.
We have Dr. Arjun Kalyanpur. He is the CEO and Chief Radiologist at Telerad Solutions. This is world leading, teleradiology company. Welcome, Dr. Arjun.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sachin. Pleasure to be here.
Hi. Yeah, and then of course we have Dr. Sethi, who is founder and managing director of Delhi Academy of Medical Sciences. He is the man behind, success of some 500,000 doctors globally. Yeah. So Delhi Academy of Medical Sciences, as all of us know, has helped, doctors to become postgraduates in various branches, including radio. So welcome, Dr. Sumer. He also is involved as an entrepreneur in radiology system. He also run a teleradiology company. We have Dr. Syed Haider from Dubai Health City. He'll be joining us a bit late today. So first of all, thanks everybody for joining us. And we have some 300 plus audience who have registered for today's webinar. And just like all of you, they are also from, different continents of the world. They are very keen to know what is happening. Interestingly, some of my batchmates and my friends pinged me because innovations in radiology are happening at very fast pace, and some of them they are fearing that AI will we understand that AI is making it more and more efficient, but some of the radiologists are having a fear that they may become redundant. So we'll like to understand from the panel first. Start with Dr. Venkat. So what are your thoughts? Is AI and technology going to take away jobs from radiologists, or is it going to make it more efficient? Yeah.
It's a good question, Dr. Sachin. Good, but at the same time, very commonly asked. And the short answer, which I normally give, is it's quite nonsense to think that a machine is going to overtake real intelligence, which is radiologists on board. At least it's not going to happen in our lifetimes. It may be sci-fi stuff at the moment. Because essentially what I think is happening is that AI is like an adjunct to radiologists for better reporting in terms of productivity as well as patient safety. So these were two very important things we need to really concentrate, for which AI is helping us. Nothing much else, in terms of replacing a doctor or anything. We still need a human to individualize our reports, individualize our patient's care, because every case that we come across is entirely different. And that's what makes our lives very interesting. We learn from every case that we get in day to day. So the other thing is, another aspect which I wanted to just touch upon is that AI is useful at the moment. It's very mainstream currently. I myself use AI every day of my life. I won't say it will replace the radiologist. It's complete bonkers, at least for the time being, or our generation. But what I certainly think is people who do not use AI, maybe they are at risk of decreasing their productivity, decreasing their opportunities or chances of becoming employable. So people should really think in those lines rather than, will AI be my threat? Will AI be my friend? And how can I use it productively in my day-to-day life? That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Venkat. So same question now I'll like to pass on to the panel. If anybody has a different opinion or if you want to add on whatever Dr. Venkat has said. So we'll start with Dr. Sumail and then we'll go to Dr. Arjun and Dr. Shamsher. Dr. Sumail.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sachin, for a wonderful question. And my answer to this is very interesting, actually. So today we are celebrating International Day of Radiology, which was when the Ranjan actually invented X-rays. Few people know that he got Nobel Prize not for medicine, he got Nobel Prize for physics. And that is the day when technology got married to radiology. Radiology and technology are like married together. Now, let's imagine a scenario like we were reporting X-rays for more than half a century. And then we had role of computers coming into radiology with CT scan, with MRI, looking at more and more details. So what has happened is the radiologists are not replaced by technology, but radiologists using technology are replacing a previous generation of radiologists who were not using technology. And that is what my understanding of technology is. Technology makes us see more than what we are able to see otherwise, understand data more, and there would be a time when everybody would be using technology in the sense like Dr. Venkat mentioned, actually, that the radiologist using AI would replace the radiologists who are not using it in a generation. That is what I feel.
Right, understood. So Dr. Arjun, what are your thoughts about this?
So I'd just like to make one observation. We've been practicing teleradiology now for 2 decades, and basically since the time teleradiology really got going in the world. And there are a lot of parallels between the way AI is coming upon us and the way teleradiology first appeared on the scene. In teleradiology was also feared initially as a threat to radiologists. It was thought to be, something that will replace radiologists. Radiologists were worried about losing their jobs. All of the same, or many of the same concerns were shared when teleradiology first appeared. And we faced a lot of these biases and prejudices and concerns. And interestingly enough, 20 years later, we've seen that it has done none of those things. It has formed provided a very valuable support system to radiologists, and it has, established its space and its role in the whole practice of radiology and in the healthcare industry as a very critical service delivery mechanism. So I think the having seen the hype that was there at the beginning of teleradiology, which has now been replaced by a more circumspect use of the technology and its practical utilization in day-to-day clinical practice. I think the same will evolve with artificial intelligence as well. And once the dust settles, we'll come to an equilibrium where man and machine are working together as partners.
Right. So very valid points and very valid observations which you have shared from your experience. Dr. Shamsher, what is your take on this?
Yeah. So, my take is fairly similar to what the other panelists have generally said. See, our perception of AI and machines generally comes from these movies or what we consume from media. And some of that gets undue higher attention or a higher focus. Some of the movies that we have watched that these robots or artificial intelligence taking over, and like Terminator, a lot of people in general life relate machine learning and AI to Terminator kind of scenarios, which is not the case. I mean, AI and machine learning have been pervasive throughout past few decades, and they've complemented the workflow in general. It's just now it's becoming more pervasive. You look at every, especially in radiology, you look at every perspective from, let's say, patient experience, patient follow-up, how we consume images, how we measure things. These all things are on the background related to artificial intelligence, and it's just making things more efficient. Now, would it replace radiologists? I'm not sure how you think about it. Just depends on how you think about it. See, if anything, any mechanism which makes things more efficient, it's essentially making one person do more work, and which essentially means that if in the future the same work would require two people, one person is doing that same job. So you could think about that it's taking up a job, but it's making people more efficient, which is a similar perspective taken from a different viewpoint. So that's what I feel. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, but to what middle that would be, it's really hard to fathom right now.
Right.
If I may add
Thank
just
you,
one
Dr.
more
K.
point,
So,
Dr. Sachin, I think we are
yes.
faced with such a profound shortage of radiologists today in the world, and the workload is increasing so rapidly and dramatically that there's going to be a very long time before any radiologist anywhere is out of a job.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the problem
Yeah.
we face is quite the opposite, actually. So I think AI can only be seen as a good thing as of now.
Right.
Yeah,
Great.
and no, I totally vouch for that, and because in at least in US, it's amazing how bad the shortage is, and with COVID coming in, I think, and the teleradiology sort of options getting more widespread, people have generally looked at their lifestyle, how they want to work, and that has really created this additional shortage of people who can do the work. They want to focus on their lifestyle along with monetary compensation. So that's an interesting angle coming into play these days.
Right. Great. So I believe the panel is unanimous that is going to actually AI and technology is going to be enabler for radiologists, and it is going to make them more efficient rather than redundant. So I want to reassure all the radiologists who are present for today's discussion that technology is actually going to help them in the long run rather than them getting scared about technology playing more important part.
If I can just add, Dr. Sachin,
Sure, Dr.
a
Venkat.
few years ago, Silicon venture capitalist Vinod Khosla said exactly the same thing that we were discussing, and he said that all radiologists are going to be redundant because of AI. And he's saying that he still keeps saying that after 10 years there will be no radiologists on the planet. There'll only be machines. But that just shows the caliber of people speaking. If you ask any radiologist who's actually doing the work, or any clinician who is ground level, sees the activity that is being performed, they don't believe that AI is going to take over. No way. So very few people have these concepts or misconcepts, whatever you may call. But yeah, so AI is like a friend to me, not a foe.
Right. So, in
I
fact,
think
Dr.
Dr.
Venkat,
Venkat, I think it's probably to do with that he is a VC, so he wants to add value to, maybe he has some investment somewhere, and they're multiplying the total cost that radiologists are and creating value for their software, maybe.
so yeah, I
Possibly.
agree, and Dr. Venkat, you brought in a very interesting point, and this is actually the purpose why we launched PhysicianVC to involve doctors into healthcare startup ecosystem. Somewhere most of the startups which are being done by non-medicals, they miss on technical inputs. How they don't understand how the overall healthcare industry works, and they don't know integrities. nitties and gritties of healthcare system. So that is why we launched this forum called Healthcare Founders Forum, where we want to actually educate doctors to have their own startups in various branches, and then mentor the existing startups. And in case they want to invest into any startups, they can become stakeholders in startup ecosystem by investments also. So good point, Dr. Venkat. So we need technical experts to actually be part of the startup ecosystem, both technically as well as from investment point of view. Great. So now actually Dr. Shamsher was when he was summarizing, he talked about COVID and how COVID has changed perception of radiology and how things are changing. Well, so since we all are emerging out of COVID, so we'll go one by one, starting from Dr. Sumer, and we'll like to understand how COVID has changed radiology and acceptance of teleradiology and other innovations in radio. Dr. Sumer.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. I think one thing that has happened is that COVID has exposed the lack of healthcare facilities. Now, I, for one, can vouch for it. In Delhi, in the second wave, we had waiting lists for getting a chest CT done in many centers. So, like, all of us, we keep talking about that what will happen if AI comes and what will happen if teleradiology takes our jobs. But what we are not understanding is that there were not enough machines as well as enough radiologists to give an opinion. During COVID time, I myself on WhatsApp, not leave aside the teleradiology and everything, on WhatsApp, I have helped so many people with the scoring and the CT severity because there was nobody, they had nowhere else to go. They're like, sir, Sumer, look at my CT and tell me what is happening. This was the kind of scenario, and it has kind of exposed the lack of healthcare facilities available in general and especially diagnostic facilities as well. But we have also seen how we could all rise to the occasion. Now, I believe that is the spirit of entrepreneurship, spirit of innovation lies in that in every dark cloud there is a silver lining, and we could see how everybody rose to the occasion. Telemedicine came off like it came off at the right time for COVID. In our own system, we got a lot more cases reported than ever. So I think COVID showed us the value of technology. Like 3 years back, people would come and tell us that why do you need teleradiology? And I have been a part of many forums where Dr. Arjun and I have been on the other side, and people would say that why do you need teleradiology in the past? And during COVID time, now everybody had to shift to teleradiology. You could not do that kind of work in the hospitals. There were radiologists covering up from the behind. So I think that is the part that it has shown us that in most difficult periods, also things can be managed. And I think Dr. Shamsher has mentioned a very interesting part that people have also changed. Now, like he said, that now the priorities of doctors also have shifted. Now, not everybody would want to cover the entire day of work, and they are more than happy to have an algorithm to help them, more than happy to have a teleradiology service to help them and maintain their work-life balance. I think those things have changed. Thank you.
Interesting points. And now I'll move to Dr. Dalal again, and you're talking about lifestyle and so anything else any other observation or experience that you'd like to share from US, Dr. Dalal?
Sure. So, with regards to, I'll touch on a couple points. With regards to the VC funding and doctors getting involved, I think it's very essential that physicians get involved in developing of these algorithms and AI companies and machine learning, because you need to have a say or a stake in what gets developed and how it gets developed, because eventually it will affect your community, and if you don't have a say in the development process, then you may not end up liking the end product in general, but you'll be forced to use it. So getting involved early would be a key thing for doctors to sort of get a product which they actually like. And obviously, lifestyle has become an important discussion these days, because um, in general, you were looking at fragility of life in general. A lot of people who thought they're working really hard right now would make good money and retire comfortably and be happy after that. That discussion has totally changed. Rather than living in the future, people are thinking about how do we live better today, and how much you work is a very important discussion in that part. So people are looking at into how much time they spend with their families, what quality of life do they have outside work. And these are important discussions which will affect the workforce in general. I mean, personally, we've had several people in our group who have um, switched to teleradiology completely, moved to a better place, which was better for their kids, better for their sort of life outside work, and taking a pay cut, working slightly harder. Um, I think these are the two main discussions that need to happen in general. And because AI makes things more efficient, um, the perception is that, oh, you can read this scan faster. I mean, it's like it's a mouse, a hamster running in a wheel, that the faster you run, you're not actually going anywhere. You'll have to read, let's say you used to read 10 CTs in half a day. Now you'll be reading 20, 30 CTs. And the more you read, the more chances of mistake. I mean, AI is not a perfect solution. It augments your work, but it does not replace you, or you're still the final say in the whole discussion. So that's an important thing to understand in the bigger picture.
Right. So you brought in a very interesting point again. To build upon whatever Dr. Venkat said, you actually said that doctors need to get involved at very early stage, and both as technical experts and as investors, and then they can work with entrepreneurs to develop a more viable product, a more acceptable product. So I'll actually move on to our next question to Dr. Arjun and understand what will be your advice for doctors, especially radiologists, who want to innovate something, or they want to become entrepreneurs in field of radiology or other branches of medicine.
Good question, Dr. Shamsher. I think, Dr. Sachin, I'm sorry. I think the key thing for any medical entrepreneur is to basically identify a clinical problem that needs to be solved, and a clinical need. And I think in to share my own example, at the turn of the century, which is the late 90s, when I was in the US, that was the time when we were finding that radiologist shortages were becoming more and more significant, and the night shift was really the area of the pain point. So the idea of doing teleradiology from across the world and using the day-night time difference to provide night shift support came up, and it addressed a very critical need of night hawk, as we call it, teleradiology, where radiologists can provide night shift support while themselves working in the daytime. So similarly, being able to hone down on a specific clinical problem such as this, I think is important to have clear focus and direction in what you're doing, rather than try to solve too many things at once. So I think once you drill down to the basics of a medical issue, of a medical problem, and focus on meeting that need and creating a solution, either a technological solution or a service, then that's where your value really becomes apparent. And then once you've done that, I think the most important thing is to focus on quality, because as we all know, as physicians, you're only as good as your last mistake, and we are very much judged by the quality of the technology we develop, the service we provide. So as we scale our enterprises, the key focus at all times has to be maintaining quality, and quality, quality, quality. There is no, it's non-negotiable. So whatever it takes in terms of ensuring that your processes are in place to meet the standards and the requirements, that's the next level. And then, of course, there's, you bring in the heavy hitters from the other areas, technology, finance, HR, etc. Find the best professionals and bring them into your organization and grow from there. But the key thing is I think having an idea of which can really transform medical care in some way, and then in ensuring that you maintain the right levels of quality at every stage of your enterprise. And of course, if enjoying what you do and being passionate about it is goes without saying. I think if entrepreneurship is to be fun, then that has to be part of the thing.
Right. Of course, entrepreneurship has to be fun, and then your focus needs to be on problem solving and maintaining quality as you scale up. Very rightly said. So, same question I'd like to pass on to Dr. Venkat. What are your thoughts? For budding radiology entrepreneurs and innovators.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. Yeah, I concur with Dr. Arjun's thoughts. In fact, I come across many startups in the field of healthcare technology at the Indian School of Business. They come to me for advice, and I always tell to them that usually people start off with a product that they already have. They may be having the best product in the world, very sexy, very latest in technology, but if it doesn't help patient care, what use is it? And I always say to them that work backwards. Try to find what is the need of the hour. What does a patient need? What does a group of patients need? Can you build a product? Do you have the skills to build a product to address that need? Is what they should be thinking. So they should start backwards. Start from the end user, which is the patient in our case, and then work backwards so that their needs are met. Unless you satisfy that need, no matter how much investment, how much technology you already have, it's not going to be useful at all. Thank you. You're on mute.
Sorry. So I said, I'd like to pass this question to Dr. Sumer and, understand what does he think that, or his advice for, budding radiology entrepreneurs or radiologists who want to innovate and, do something else in medicine. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin. And I think, I will totally agree with what Dr. Venkat and Dr. Arjun said. To me, the basic mantra of entrepreneurship is follow your customer. For us as radiologists, our customer or the person that we are serving is the patient. So if somehow, as a budding radiologist, if you're able to follow the journey of a patient in your hospital, how are these studies getting scheduled for your patients? Is it how does that happen for an OPD patient? How does it happen for a ward patient? And can you somehow make it more efficient? Can you solve a problem? And do you think that people will be willing to pay for the solution? Going onwards to how images are being acquired in your hospital. Now, in the early 1980s, 1990s, every decade we were hearing that now there's a new machine available, now there's an ultrasound machine available, now there's Doppler, now there's MRI available. But in the last 2 decades, I think we don't see too many new machines coming up. We see more soft innovation happening, more with algorithms, more with are we able to innovate somehow which will make you see more than whatever I can see in the data? I keep hearing about branches like radiogenomics where we can, where there is more in the image than what we can see. So there would be innovation there. Then we look at if you look at how radiologists are working right now. So one of the main problems that I face as a radiologist is that which study to report first. And I'm sure Dr. Arjun would be the right man to talk about how to deal with the emergency imaging. But like, if there could be an algorithm which could push up that, okay, this is what you need to look at early, this is the most important, and going forward to so it is about making the system more efficient, more accurate. And like, in COVID, in particularly in COVID times, we saw we were giving reports in terms of level of suspicions, we were giving reports in terms of sensitivity, and this is how the entire lab science is today. If we can have algorithms which can make it more accurate, which can make us more confident, and then there would be innovations in the field of communication as well. Like, there are few things that I have tried out as in my own system, is like, in the early, in 2007 or 8, when I started my teleradiology firm, we started giving images with arrow marked at the pathologies, and so that the clinician could have a key image and he could look at it. And although it was a small jugaad kind of a thing, but the clinicians loved it, because they had no way to look at the entire film and find out where the problem is. And now I feel if somebody could look at the idea of adding a voice note for the referring physician, video communication. So can we look at the entire of the chain from the point where patient schedules a study to how the report is getting to him, and can somebody actually explain the findings to the patient and to the referring physician? If we can look at the entire life cycle, in each part of the life cycle there will be places where innovation can happen, where a viable solution can be created, and where you can actually have the scale that you desire as an entrepreneur. That is what I feel.
Right. Very valid suggestion, Dr. Sumer. So actually, you're suggesting that across the entire value chain, there are opportunities for innovators and entrepreneurs in the field of radio. So, Dr. Sumer, your thoughts on this? Would like to hear from you.
That Shamsher. So
Yeah.
several great points in the whole discussions regarding this point. One is obviously providing a service. I mean, it's exceptionally important to provide a good service, have a level of trust, as Arjun said, and people would use your product for a while and try it out, and especially if they are in a difficult time. But as soon as they get options, they would switch to a new vendor if you're not providing good service. So that's exceptionally important. And the second is what Sumer said about yourself walking through the sort of the workflow from a patient perspective. You don't sometimes in your mundane lives, when you're going through your routine work, you're focused on what you're supposed to do, and you do forget about what the experience of the patient is, what the experience of your technologists and your staff is. So it is sometimes it's very important to go through the workflow yourself, trying to look at from a patient perspective, and that's where you identify a lot of problems, and that is an essential part what they teach in operations management, that you yourself simulate what somebody is going through, and that's where you realize where are the inefficiencies in the system, where are scopes for improvement, and also you find out where can you add value with your new ideas. I mean, it's important to have these rotations. If you're involved with a business school, it's important to have these people who are founders or trying to start up something new, have them go through the workflow in a hospital. I mean, the hospital and healthcare in general has a lot of opportunities spread out everywhere. It's just you need to open your mind and look at from that perspective. Everywhere where you see something that can be improved is an opportunity for a startup. And also from non-physician people, it gives them opportunity to better understand what people are going through, what people's problems are. And so they get a very new perspective when they are trying to build a product. So that's what I feel.
Right. So, thanks, Dr. Shamsher, for your viewpoints. And I believe, the entire panel actually unanimously agrees that the focus of innovators and entrepreneurs need to be on problem solving across the entire value chain. And that is where, if they find opportunities, they can create value for themselves and for the society. So, and now again, I'll start with Dr. Sumer because he brought upon a very interesting topic that we all are talking about, teleradiology and AI. But Dr. Sumer brought in, something called radiogenomics, which is a new thing to me. So other than, AI and teleradiology, Dr. Sumer will like to share some more recent innovations in field of radiology, uh, for interest of our viewers today.
Definitely, I think although like what I've seen is that the entire progress in radiology, if I look back, because when we look back, we can look into the future because that has happened and it shows us that how things have happened. Radiology has evolved because of the powers of computers. Once we understand this, it will give a lot of peace to lot of budding radiologists and a lot of medical students who want to opt for radiology. Like if I meet a lot of medical students who are saying that they don't want to pursue radiology because they are afraid that technology will replace them. And while it is the other way around, technology will make us more strong. And this has always been the case. This is how radiology has evolved. Otherwise, we would have been reporting X-rays done with the analog technology, and we would have been sitting in a dark room developing films. So we have to love technology if we are into the field of radiology today. Uh, right from every part of it, like when in the world we had computers, in radiology we had CT scanning. With the computers and the graphics got powerful in radiology, we have 3D reconstructions coming up. When the network and internet came strong, we saw teleradiology developing, and teleradiology is the poster boy of telemedicine actually. So telemedicine came a bit later into its own vogue, teleradiology came a little early. Now I feel now if we look at all this, now we know that in world outside radiology, people are looking at ways to visualize and control the computer better using things like AR, VR, and put the image into you would want to as a radiologist, maybe if you can just hold the brain in your virtual hand and rotate it, see that okay, this is the tumor located, your description, your the way you describe the things would improve. So I think one of the innovations would happen in the way we are looking at it, looking at the image. We were looking I'm not sure if anybody who's listening to us today is aware of a white box called as view box. When I was doing my MD, we had a white box in which we had a tube light, and we would keep our film and see the image there. Now everybody is looking at things in workstation. Now the children who are right now looking at images on a workstation do not even know there was something like a view box in the past. Similarly, I believe in near future there would be AR and VR tools where a radiologist will be visualizing things in real time and collaborating with the clinical colleague in real time and showing him that okay, this is what I am looking at. And second thing is that images have data which is far more than what a human eye can see. We have although not in my own experience, I'm not having enough experience into this field, but from what I read about is that there is a lot more information on abdominal CT scan. Like suppose you're looking at a CT scan, you're looking at a liver abscess, but his aorta might have slight irregularity in his intima, or there is information far more in the image data itself which we are not looking at. And I believe that would be the game changer in future. And like one thing that has happened is ever since technology has come into play in radiology is we had one chest x-ray film to be looked at. Now with CT we have to look at multiple sections. In future you will not only look at multiple sections, you would also rotate them in real time with AR VR, and you would also have multiple algorithms giving you information on different organs, how and different projections, and you will be the person making decisions on those data is what I feel.
Right. So very, very interesting inputs on how the future of radio will look like. So same question I'll pass on to Dr. Arjun. Will you like to share some of the latest innovations, and how does the future of radio look like?
So, Dr. Sachin, one observation I'd like to make is that I think innovations, there can be macro and there can be micro. And part of what we've realized in our organization is that the micro innovations are just as important as the macro ones. So, just the little fine tuning tweaks that improve radiologist process and efficiency. Uh, every one less mouse click for a radiologist in today's digital imaging era is one less ergonomic function and a few milliseconds shaved off the process of reporting. And I think cumulatively that translates, into many macro benefits in the entire healthcare system. So we're always looking within our organization to make the process of image review more efficient, process of reporting more efficient, usage of smart workflows to ensure that images are directed appropriately to the appropriate radiologist at the appropriate time, and then the radiologist is able to review them in the most efficient manner. At a time when radiologists are in short supply, I think radiologists' time is the most precious commodity today. And it's up to us as radiologists to preserve that and utilize it to its greatest efficiency so that we can continue to have that work life balance. So I think a lot of innovation today is centered around simply making radiologists function at an optimal level of productivity where their time is not being wasted, and that's ultimately based on the workflows that guide how we perform and how we practice. The second area that I think and this is related to what Dr. Samir was saying about radiogenomics, is the whole concept of quantification in radiology. Radiology today is no longer just a subjective description of findings. It's a lot of quantitation that is involved in radiology, and in emergency radiology, which is what I practice. We're seeing that in the form of particularly in the trauma setting, giving scores and scales to trauma CTs. There are a number of scoring systems for pretty much everything now in radiology, and being able to quantify and objectivize your data and present it in a format where it's of value to the clinician. So this brings us to the concept of adding value. And the US has this term of meaningful use, and they talk about adding value. Ultimately, it's about tailoring your reporting, your communication to your customer, who's primarily the clinician, secondarily the patient. So that making that communication as concise and as relevant as possible, so that the patient care can be delivered most optimally. I think that's our second area of focus in radiology innovation, to make to bring ourselves into that paradigm where we add greatest value and support to our clinical counterparts.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Arjun. So we move to Dr. Venkat for his viewpoints about some of the recent innovations and how does the future of radiology looks like.
Yeah, Dr. Sachin, thank you. When Dr. Sumer was talking about light box, I even remember sometimes the light box was not working. Sometimes the light was flashing, the blinking light, if you all remember at those times. And we used to waste hours and hours just for reporting one X-ray. So indeed, times have changed. We only need a few seconds now to report an X-ray from any part of the world. In fact, in my day-to-day practice, where I report for the UK NHS and Ireland, only takes a few seconds for a trauma CT to come across. And people are actually surprised that the speed and pace has been so good, even compared to those who are sitting right next door within the UK. So we have come across a long way from where we were, and radiology is probably the epitome of tech-based innovations in healthcare. Also, I would like to add that as I said, there are many startups with whom I consult, including some world-class AI. There's a very nice software company from the UK with whom I consult since a long time. And they have a web-based PACS, which is also mobile application. So essentially, you have a complete PACS just on your mobile phone. You can scroll through images, do 3D recons, and do everything, which I think is really brilliant, because it's not reportable standards, but things like an urgent finding which needs to be communicated to the nearest clinician. You can just share the image and say that, look, this patient has got so and so, can you act upon it right now? Or when a senior is sitting, you want a second opinion, and you can easily share those images across. Now we are all using WhatsApp, which is poor quality imaging, very much dependent on how you take the image. But these kind of innovations really help, and it's the fact that we can do all this seamlessly within seconds across the world, which is really, really fascinating with relation to radiology. So I believe communications, sharing images, sharing patients' details, better communications, and ultimately better patient care is what all these innovations are all about. And sometimes, just to add one more thing, the tech guys with whom I work, they come to me and say that, hey, look, we've got this new idea. Is it workable? And sometimes I have to say that, look, this is not going to directly affect patient care. It's just added extra information. What would I as a clinician do? It won't be useful ultimately. It may be good for data analytics and so on, but if it is not helpful for ultimate patient care, improving patient's quality and safety, I don't believe that it's the need of the hour. So yeah, innovations have to be addressing the patient's concern and improving patient care. That's what I strongly believe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Venkat. So now I move to Dr. Shamsher with same question. Dr. Shamsher, your thoughts on future of radiology?
Yeah, I mean, several interesting points, especially with patient care and communication, which are fantastic. I think communication is something that is ignored a lot, especially from a radiologist perspective, that you are working in a sort of a standalone environment, and how you communicate the report to the clinician is of significant importance. I think that is a significant area where innovation can and should help in the future. It's significantly improved still. I mean, there are we don't carry pagers anymore. We use something called as Tiger Connect. This is Tiger texting. So it's a phone-based app, HIPAA compliant and everything. And so we've stopped carrying pagers at all. So that's a very interesting thing, because the more devices you carry, the more hassles there are. But in general, I think we'll move towards a more integrated future in where radiology will be sort of seamlessly integrated into the bigger scheme of things, well connected with the EHR, and like Epic is a big vendor in the United States. And I think what we are seeing right now is more and more integration of the EHR into our workflow, where it serves as a means for communication. It also serves as a means for radiologists to get a right clinical perspective, because you're not looking at images in a isolated environment. The clinical perspective, how you interpret a particular image, the clinical situation dictates that a lot. So having that information on the fingertips is exceptionally important these days. And with regard to the hardware part, most of these companies are coming up with integrated solutions, like virtual cockpit for Siemens, and similar model for Philips, where it really doesn't matter where the scanners are. You have a central command of technologists at the one central place, and they can dictate, they can run the scanner from remote applications. So that's coming in a big way, because that brings in consolidation for these vendors, because it's an integrated solution. So you are looking at using that product from end to end. Robotics is coming in a big way in radiology, especially in interventional space. Recently, we demoed a remote angio robot Corindus it is called. It was acquired by Siemens Healthcare very recently. That we can perform angiographies and carotid stenting and aneurysm coilings uh, from a remote location. Right now, the trials are being done in the same hospital, that you're in a separate part of the room, and just for patient safety and all that. But I think the initial trials were done in India, where um, where the distance was some like 30, 40 kilometers. And as the information, as the connectivity gets faster and more real time, and this will become a major thing, that robotics will be involved in a big way in how radiology delivers care. Um, and in my daily practice with stroke treatments, we last night I was doing a thrombectomy, and the patient was 24 hours out of initial symptoms, but based on bare basic images, we thought, we are not sure, but we did perfusion imaging right on the scanner. The results get automatically populated with we use a vendor called Viz AI. So it gives perfusion data. It gives us what is the area or brain at risk, and based on that we make decisions whether to intervene or not. So that has been a big change, and because these changes happen in a very slow piecemeal fashion, sometimes you don't realize uh, how big of a change has happened in a short interval of time. So innovation and COVID has sort of accelerated. I mean, it's provided a sort of a fuel to innovation. It's you might think of it as a not letting a crisis
Catalyst.
go waste. So
So we always say that COVID has acted as a catalyst for healthcare innovation.
yeah.
So very rightly you said it has fueled the innovation. So yeah, so two key takeaways from future of radiology and innovations. One is the innovators need to focus on customers, internal customers, which are doctors and physicians and other healthcare professionals who are dealing with patients. And secondly, of course, the patient himself. And all these things will actually translate into better clinical outcomes for patients in future. So yeah, so the innovation which you're talking about, robotics, and how a procedure was done from a distance of 30-40 kilometer. So that's the future of radiology and medicine. And as rightly one of the panelists, Dr. Sumer, actually pointed that it is at the epitome of medicine. And the technology is first touched by radiology. And we're talking about x-rays in the start of this discussion. And then various other aspects like AI, so then teleradiology, and then teleradiology translated into telemedicine. So similarly, I'm sure radiology will show way to other branches for innovation also. We are now moving into the last part of this discussion, where I'll like to understand from you, since all of you come from different geographies, and have been leaders in radio. So what do you think is going to be role of professional bodies like Rasna or IRI? How can they support innovation and entrepreneurship in radiology segment? Dr. Venkat.
Yes, Dr. Sachin, thank you. Actually, in the RSNA, there are quite a few exciting and encouraging offers and things to, incentives for the startups for innovating new technology. For example, they give a reduction in the price for stalls for exhibiting their software or hardware, whatever the case may be. So RSNA actually is very, very step ahead in many of the fields for encouraging innovation. Similarly, the Royal College of Radiologists and the European Society of Radiology, Indian Radiology Association, I've been with them since the last couple of years, and they have shown some of the younger office bearers are really forward thinking in their approach to innovation, approach to new technology. Teleradiology is well established and well encouraged. In fact, the Indian Radiology Association were doing a lot of resident training and teaching on tele platform since COVID happened. So a lot of encouragement has been going on with these major bodies. But actually, ultimately speaking, the innovation has to come from within. And again, goes back to the point which I can't help but stress again is patient care and patient user experience is what any innovation needs to think about and start working from that end backwards and develop a product fit for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Venkat. Dr. Arjun, what do you think, how can, professional bodies like RSNA or, IRI, they can support innovators and entrepreneurs in radiology?
So I think primarily the role of such bodies is education, and I think they do an excellent job in this regard. I think the RSNA traditionally has always highlighted. They have these very cutting edge lectures in the meetings, the Pendergrass lecture and so on, which bring to life the most cutting edge of technologies, the most latest in every area. So it's the same with IRI as well. So I think to bring new technologies to the forefront and hold them up to the spotlight and give opportunities to the innovators to display their technologies, that's one way that they can support and that they do. And the second is obviously in the form of funding and research grants. So the other aspect which I think the associations can make a big contribution, and especially with COVID, we've seen is with the distance education. I think along with everything else, digital education has also become completely digitized now, as we're seeing in this panel discussion today. And having the ability to deliver online learning content is really important today to address the shortages of radiologists. So we run an online radiology education portal, and I think that such portals are very important today in advancing the specialty in all its aspects and in delivering education at scale. I think we don't need to be constrained by a classroom or an institution anymore. We can deliver across the length and breadth of the country. And so national and international associations can be particularly helpful in that regard. So, and with education comes research and innovation. So they're all catalysts that allow the specialty to move forward. So I think that's where really organizations such as ours, we've always been involved with the associations in terms of exhibiting and presenting our research and our showing our technologies, and it's been very rewarding as an experience, both from the perspective of sharing ideas, sharing experiences, and also from the point of view of making connections. And I think that's what ultimately the associations give us that opportunity.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Arjun. So now I'll move on to Dr. Shamsher, and we want to understand your thought process on how an innovator or entrepreneur in field of radio or any other branch of medicine can raise funds. Since you come from finance background, also you're a Wharton MBA. So what would be your advice, whether to bootstrap or whether to raise funds from day one, or how to go about it, and what can be role of platforms like PhysicianVC, where physicians actually acts as VC, and they kind of provide seed money to physician entrepreneurs or other entrepreneurs. Dr. Shamsher.
Yeah. So I think having physician-backed funding agencies is very important, and because physicians better understand what the perspective is from a healthcare delivery point of view, and I think they can assess opportunities a little better. The second is, I think funding wise, you have to also look at from a founder's perspective. Founder, um, they have developed an idea, and it depends on what stage they are. I feel that the founder should test their idea or develop it a little more, and rather than just asking for money upfront, because one, they lose autonomy for developing their product and having a say and what eventually gets developed. And that can be really frustrating for a lot of people, that generally people go with the idea that, oh, I've developed this idea, and I should have a more say in it, but they lose that control eventually as they go down the lane. And this is something that people don't realize. And what I would say is, idea is probably not the most important thing in general when you look at innovation and developing your product. It's the execution, how you sort of execute the development of that product is paramount importance. How you manage funding, what stage, how you make partners along the way. These are very important things that one needs to understand. Yeah, I mean, money is important to scale operations. There's very little, very few people can actually do it on their own, and they eventually need funding from elsewhere. But I think, what stage would they want to get that? That is the key idea that they need to sort of, a key question that they need to answer. So,
Right. Very valid suggestions. This is a question, which oneself can answer only. So we are already overshooting the time. So my last question will be to Dr. Sumer Sethi, and since he comes from radiology and education background, and the purpose of having this forum is to educate doctors community globally about innovation and entrepreneurship. So Dr. Sumer, what are your thoughts, how physician VC can add value in terms of educating physicians and entrepreneurs and innovators doing innovation in healthcare and radio, and what is the scope of collaboration for physician VC with professional bodies like IRA, RSNA, or RCA?
I think, Dr. Sachin, it has been an enlightening discussion, and I think I personally enjoyed listening to all the panelists. So, what my 2 cents here are: number one is that we need to encourage the residents to participate in the process of radiology, not just the reporting part, into the entire process. Like when I was a radiology resident, I had no idea what CT machine is being purchased in my hospital, and what are the costs, how to customize it for that particular use. And it was being done in a very closed manner with the department heads doing it. And as a postgraduate resident, I had no idea what is going on. And to be honest, I did not actually initiate also that I want to understand what is going on. When you go on in the real world, you find out that, okay, in 6 years down the line, you're sitting as a consultant in a hospital. Now the hospital wants to take your expert opinion that, okay, Sumer, Dr. Sumer, please tell us that what kind of algorithms should we buy. And you have never been a part of that entire exercise. So one thing that I want all the radiology residents, at least during your MD, be a part of the entire process of how a patient enters the hospital, how the patient goes into your center, how machines are being purchased, how they are installed, what is the entire process. If you know the process, you are the king. Now, second thing is that do not forget that why you become an entrepreneur, because I keep seeing people, and I'm very, I actually concur with what Dr. Shamsher has said here, is that sometimes in the race to raise funds, I have seen people lose freedom. And why do you become an entrepreneur is because you don't want to work for somebody, because you don't get that freedom to create things in your own way, and you don't want to lose that freedom. So keep in mind that when you take the plunge as an entrepreneur, you do not trade freedom too early into the system. You may need funds to scale, definitely, but do not trade that freedom too early into the game. And always keep calculating the impact. Don't calculate the money. Calculate the impact that your solution is doing. If you're able to touch more and more lives, you would be successful even if you're not earning money at this stage, is what I have learned. And when I say what I've learned is that I have grown Delhi Academy of Medical Sciences from one center to 250 centers in the last 2 decades, and we have grown our mobile app from one user to 500,000 doctors in a period of last 3 years. So I think, and it's like all possible, but it is all about getting involved into every step of it. You may not be doing everything. Like I sometimes I feel that residents no longer are visiting the where the X-ray is being done, what a technician is doing. You need to feel every part of the process. You may not be doing it in the long run, but if you know it, you will be optimizing it when you become an entrepreneur. That is what I feel.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Sumer. In fact, I'd like to, we have overshoot by 5 minutes, so we'd like to conclude here. And the crux of today's discussion is that entrepreneurs and innovators need to focus on problem solving, keeping the patient at the center, and then of course, rather than money, you should be chasing value addition. To patient's journey and making the overall system more outcome driven, and bettering the clinical outcomes. So if you are able to do that sort of betterment, you'll definitely succeed. And you need to be patient. We heard the first hand entrepreneurship story of Dr. Sumer just now, how he scaled from one having one user on his app to 500,000 doctors. So that's very inspiring for all of us. And thanks to all panelists who have joined us today for your valuable time and giving your technical inputs and sharing your stories and giving advice to future entrepreneurs. Also, I'd like to thank our guests who have joined today's discussion from various parts of the world. Thank you so much, and have a good evening and good day.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Sachin.
Thank you.